Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am Dr. Nurunisa Maskadi from DMC, Pediatric Assistant Professor. And today we want to learn about upper respiratory tract infection. The topic is basically the upper respiratory tract infection, and it's a very broad topic. Upper respiratory tract start from the nose, pharynx, larynx, up to the trachea. Okay, so involvement of any of this side infection we have to deal in this topic, but it's a very broad topic. So we divide it in this lecture. We usually we are more pertinent to deal with epiglottitis and croup, laryngotracheal bronchitis. Before that, and the upper respiratory tract infection is one of the most common infection in pediatric age group. It makes about, if you deal with a chunk of diseases in pediatric age group, upper respiratory infection is the commonest infection in pediatric age group. In neuropathies, most of the patients, a big chunk is of upper respiratory tract infection. And the common upper respiratory infection, if we start from the nose, including rhinitis, tonsillitis, pharyngitis, laryngitis, and tracheitis, with different causes. Causes could be due to, most of the time, viral infections, bacterial infections, or sometimes the upper respiratory tract, not infection, upper respiratory disease also include. If we learn about upper respiratory diseases, it also include the obstruction, the other obstructive causes of the upper respiratory tract infection. That also include the foreign body inhalation, foreign body aspiration, and burns injury, trauma to the neck. These are also included in the topic of the upper respiratory tract diseases. So the topic, diphtheria, the commonest, including the infections of pharynx, including diphtheria, pertussis, and rhinitis, allergic rhinitis, viral rhinitis, and but we discuss these topics in separate lectures. And today we basically deal with the upper airway obstructions in pediatric age group. Upper airway obstruction this is the common cause of pediatric emergency. Chronic, and it is accounting for approximately 15% of all the critically ill pediatric patients that we deal in the emergency. Infection etiologies account for about 90% of the cases of upper respiratory tract obstruction in pediatric age group is the infectious etiology. Of these, the viral croup, this is the viral tracheolaryngeal bronchitis, is accounting for about 80% of all the cases. And second is the epiglottitis. Epiglottitis accounts for about 5% of all the severe cases of upper respiratory tract obstruction. Other significant causes, including the tracheitis, most of the bacterial tracheitis, tonsillar pathology that may be bacterial, the common are the viral, and bacterial also include, most common is the streptococcal group B bacterial infections, and diphtheria and pertussis. Diphtheria, pertussis, these we all deal in several lectures. Today we emphasize only on croup and epiglottitis. So traumatic etiologies also, as I already mentioned, that traumatic etiology is one of the cause of upper respiratory tract disease or upper respiratory obstructions, that including the foreign bodies, external trauma to the neck, burns, and post intubation trauma. In young infants, we also deal as regarding the upper respiratory tract obstruction or diseases, we also deal with congenital etiologies. And the congenital etiologies, including the presence of laryngeal web, presence of vocal nodules, and pharyngeal or laryngeal congenital stenosis. But these are the rare entities. Less common is the edema secondary to some severe allergic infection, but allergic infection, rhinitis, is one of the common cause of upper respiratory tract infection in children. So therefore, regarding when we deal with the obstruction of upper airway, we have to know what is the difference between the upper airway of a child and the adult. In pediatric age group, in children, the tongue is more larger than in case of adults. it is easily displaced back. And the most common cause of airway obstruction in the obtunded or unconscious child. In unconscious child, due to a large lung, this large lung that will displace posteriorly and cause obstruction in children. That's why when you deal with the unconscious child, you have to place mouth gag immediately and treat in the left lateral position. The narrowest portion of the pediatric airway is the cricoid ring, that making obstruction with subglottic pathology more likely than in adults. So, um, in pediatric age group, the obstruction when a child there are the sign and symptoms of upper respiratory tract infection is different. Sign and symptoms of upper respiratory tract infection depends upon the site. Like in rhinitis, the children or pediatric age group, these children are present with flu, nasal obstruction, or low grade or high grade fever, and continuously running nose. Likewise, if the child is present with pharyngitis, they are usually present with cough, irritative dry cough, and or maybe with the fever. And if there is severe pharyngitis, they may present with the respiratory distress also. If the child has tonsillitis, they're usually present with fever, sore throat, sometimes with the cough, difficulty in swelling. But when the children are present with obstruction, the common sign and symptoms, if the child is present with upper respiratory tract obstruction, are they usually present with stridor. They usually present with the signs of respiratory distress. They usually present with the hoarseness of the voice. And the respiratory distress, when we say that the child is in distress, when two of the five signs of what? Presence of increased respiratory rate, grunting, or the child becomes cyanosed, use of accessory muscles, and flaring of LNSI. I repeat it: increased respiratory rate, grunting, cyanosis, flaring of LNSI, and use of accessory muscles. If any two of the signs is present, we can say that this child is in respiratory distress. So the common sign and symptom of uh, upper respiratory tract obstruction, child is present with respiratory distress. They usually have a stridor and they may have hoarseness of the voice. What is a stridor? A stridor is basically a harsh vibratory sound of variable pitch. This is due to the partial, not complete, partial obstruction of the airway that results in turbulent airflow through these airways. Stridor could be inspiratory stridor that is present in the inspiratory phase, or it could be expiratory stridor that is present in the expiratory phase of the breathing, or the stridor may be biphasic, that is the stridor phase in both inspiratory or expiratory phase. A healthy child easily tolerate moderate to severe. Healthy child means that the child who do not have other comorbidities, like do not have asthma or some congenital diseases or some cardiac problem. They usually have a very good toleration. They usually tolerate moderate to severe airway obstruction and maintain his or her tidal volume till the end of the exhaustion. But when they become exhausted, at that time hypoxia, hypercapnia, and acidosis progress rapidly, and that leads to cardiac arrest. How can you tell where is the problem? Basically, if the lesion is in the or obstruction or any lesion or disease in the supraglottic side, it's like in epiglottitis, they usually present with inspiratory stridor, a prolonged inspiratory phase, and the muffled sound, muffled voice. Whereas when this lesion or obstruction is at the level of the glottic lesion, they usually have high pitched. They also present with high pitched inspiratory stridor, and but they have hoarse voice. They do not have muffled, they have hoarse voice. As compared to those children who have subglottic lesions or subglottic obstruction, they usually have expiratory stridor with a normal voice or an a brassy curve. Failure to manage the airway is the leading cause of preventable death in children. So we have to know exactly how you have to manage, what are the problems, and how you have to manage it. So the most common cause of upper respiratory tract infection in children, or the cause of upper respiratory tract obstruction in children, is the croup. Croup is basically also called the laryngotracheobronchitis. It is basically a viral illness. Most common cause of croup or upper respiratory tract airway obstruction is the croup, and most of the time, in 80% of the cases, it is the virality. It is of its viral etiology. Approximately 10% of the children seen with croup require admission. Most of them we deal in the OPD basis. They are usually less. They are not toxic, but in 10% of the cases, they may become moral and they may need hospitalization. Or about 1% to 2%, they may require intubation also or ICU admission. Basic pathophysiology, it's viralness, and it is usually transmitted by the respiratory route. Initial port of entry is the nose and nasopharynx, and the basic symptoms is the prodromal phase that is lasts for about 2 to 3 days. The initial prodromal phase sign and symptoms include mild nasal congestion, sore throat, and mild cough. Nasal congestion, mild nasal congestion, sore throat, or a cough. But as the infection is spread distally and it involves the pharynx and larynx, and edema becomes increased, then these children usually present, not in distress, they usually present with the stridor. They are not in much distress. They usually have more pronounced stridor. That is basically the inspiratory stridor. And they usually have hoarse voice with a bark like cough. And the stridor, and basically, croup is inspiratory stridor. And the viral etiology that is responsible for croup, the common includes the influenza virus, respiratory syncytial virus, parainfluenza virus, rhinovirus, or the measles sometimes cause laryngotracheal bronchitis also. Mean age, the most common age is of 1.5 years of age, range from 3 months to 3 years. Usually less than 3 years age group, we see croup in this age group with a slight male predominance. Seasonal, there is a seasonal variability. More common, they usually croup is present in season of autumn or early winter, because viral like in flu, they are usually present in late autumn or early winter season. They may have the child may have temperature, but the fever usually not high grade. Drooling is uncommon in croup. They may have mild expiratory wheeze. Most of the time, they have inspiratory wheeze, but sometimes if it involves the subglottic region, they may have both, biphasic wheeze, expiratory as well as inspiratory. But the classical wheeze stridor in croup is the inspiratory stridor at rest with flaring. Sometimes they may present with severe distress, but most of the time they usually have mild symptoms. But less than 10% of the cases, these children may present with severe stridor, nasal flaring, use of accessory muscles. There are all the signs of respiratory distress. And when you auscultate the chest, they may have poor air entry due to edema of the upper respiratory tract. They may have, if they becomes the symptoms becomes more severe, they may become lethargic or agitated. These are the signs of hypoxia. So the diagnosis of laryngotracheal bronchitis or croup is basically it's a viral your clinical diagnosis. It's a clinical diagnosis, and when whatever is the cause of upper respiratory tract infection and other respiratory infection as well as the croup, we usually classify the severity of the disease on the basis of the scoring system. The commonest scoring system that is used is the Westlake scoring system. It is primarily used for the research purposes. Basically, that we calculate the score and say that and classify the child that this is of a mild variety, moderate, or severe variety. That whether the child is hospital admission, ICU admission, or you deal with the child on the OPD basis. And these score, it depends. These are the sum of the points that is assigned for the 5 factors. What are the 5 factors? Level of consciousness of the child, whether the child is fully conscious or irritated or agitated, or the fully abundant or the fully unconscious child. It depends. The score depends on that. Cyanosis, whether the child is of maintaining oxygen saturation or not cyanosed at the room air, or the child is cyanosed even with oxygen, or the child may be severe or cyanosis at rest, or the presence of the stridor. And the present and the depend scoring also depends upon the air entry, whether the air entry is equal bilaterally or it is decrease unilaterally, or decrease in some area, or there is no air entry at all. And scoring also depends on the retractions. Retractions are the presence of use of accessory muscles, subcostal, intercostal recessions, and use of the muscles of the neck. If there is use of the subcostal, intercostal recessions, you give the score according to that. So on the basis of these five factors, you assign a score, and the score is range from 0 to 17. If 85% of the children presenting to the emergency department usually have the mild disease, severe group is, I already mentioned, in less than 1%, 1 to 2% of the cases that may need intubation. But mild group is common, and it is present in most of the children have usually mild symptoms, and they usually score from 0 to 3 only. But if the score range from 7 to 10, 7 to 15, it indicates it's a moderate. And if it is more than 14, it indicates that the child have severe symptoms. So they may need admissions or may need ICU admission. Uh, Usually we do not make the diagnosis of group only on the clinical, on the basis of the clinical findings. We usually do not do these labs. But if you want to do the lab, the labs you have to done is X-ray of the neck. It is not usually routinely performed, but if you do the X-ray of the neck, you will find what? You find the characteristic narrowing of the trachea due to the swelling of the mucosa. That is present with this. That is we call the stipple sign. Because of this is because of subglottic stenosis. How you say this is the stipple sign? This is the stipple sign. And that is the swelling due to the edema of the subglottic region. There is narrowing of the trachea. Okay, there is narrowing of the trachea called the stipple signs. And if you send you have to, if you want to assess the etiology, you may send the nasopharyngeal swab for viral or bacterial culture. But usually on clinical basis, you diagnose it, and most of the time, more 80 to 90% of the time, it is usually viral etiology. We usually do not send the nasopharyngeal swab. But if you want to diagnose what is the possible etiology, you have to send the nasopharyngeal swab for viral and bacterial culture. And what is the treatment? The basic treatment of nasopharyngeal, of laryngotracheal bronchitis or croup is reassurance of the parents. You have to reassure the parent that this disease is not severe. It usually resolves within 2 to 3 days. But if the child but you have to only give the symptomatic treatment. That if the child has fever, you control it with the paracetamol. And but if the baby is in severe distress, or the scoring is more than 10, then you have to provide oxygen. The child is not maintaining oxygen. You say the signs of respiratory distress were there, then you have to give humidified oxygen to the child. Steroid and we listen, humidified oxygen provide water and penetrate because why humidified? If you give the dry oxygen, then it produces more irritation. It's called dryness of the upper respiratory tract infection that cause more inflammation, and more symptoms gets more worse. So you have to give the humidified oxygen that water penetrate the area of inflammation, add moisture to the mucosa, and it decreases the dryness of the airway, and the viscosity of the secretion gets increased, so that it help in the facilitate to clear for the clearance of the airway secretions. So you may give oxygen, but it is only for the moderate to severe cases, not on the mild cases. Mild cases usually need reassurance or only the paracetamol. The symptoms usually resolve by itself within 2 to 3 days. But if the child has severe, if they have signs of distress, like they use accessory muscles, they become cyanosis, and with severe respiratory difficulty, you have to give oxygen. Steroids have controversial use, may give, but they have very controversial role. You may give if bronchospasm is there, then you may nebulize the child with the albuterol. Racemic epinephrine has some role. You may nebulize the child with racemic epinephrine. It is indicated for the children with stridor at rest, or they are in more distress. Then those children who are in distress, having severe stridor, then you may nebulize the child with racemic epinephrine. that decrease the what epinephrine is done. They decrease the airway obstruction, reduces the inflammation of the airway. Maximum effect is seen in 30 minutes, but when you stop giving epinephrine, there may be rebound in 2 hours also. So you have to regularly nebulize the child with racemic epinephrine and provide oxygen also. Uh, this is for the second common cause of upper respiratory obstruction, that is about around 5%, is the epiglottitis. Epiglottitis, initially before the advancement of the vaccination, the the frequency of epiglottitis is much more, but after the introduction of vaccine for Haemophilus influenza, epiglottitis becomes less common. This is also known as the supraglottitis. Group is called the subglottitis, or the laryngotracheal bronchitis, or epiglottitis is it is because epiglottis is in the supraglottic region, which is also known as supraglottitis. Male is more. 60% of that epiglottitis is present in the male. The age group is more than the group. Like the epiglottis usually occur in age group of 3 to 7 years in age, with only 4% of the patient under 1 year of age. It's it's least common in children under the age of 1 year. The most common, it is basically most of the time it is the basis of bacterial etiology. Haemophilus influenza is in the top. The most common etiology of epiglottitis in children. But sometimes epiglottitis is due to viral or allergic reaction, and epiglottitis can also occur with the physical or thermal injuries. But the commonest cause of epiglottitis is a bacteria. That is a Haemophilus influenza bacteria. Pathophysiology is that it is the local invasion of the epiglottitis followed by the bacteremia that cause inflammation of the epiglottitis, epiglottic folds, vocal cords, and supraglottic structure become inflamed, edematous. That these inflammation, because airway is a narrow in pediatric age group, when there is inflammation, that further narrowed the airway, so that's caused decreased airway entry and respiratory compromise. Inspiratory airway occlusion often occur prior to the total occlusion from the supraglottic edema. So when you do X-ray in that child, what you find is a swollen epiglottitis, the thumb sign. Swollen epiglottitis, thickened epiglottic fold, obliteration of the vallicella. That is when you do the lateral X-ray. In group, you need the anterior-posterior X-ray, but in case of if you suspect epiglottitis, you have to do the lateral X-ray of the neck. And on lateral X-ray of the neck, you find a swollen epiglottis. That is also called the thumb sign. But basically, usually this epiglottis is also the clinical diagnosis. The sign and symptom usually there is not insidious. It is a sudden appearance. The child usually have high grade fever, sore throat, muffled voice. They usually have muffled voice as compared to the hoarse voice in group. Cough is usually minimum. The more is the fever, sore throat, muffled voice, and due to the edema, they have difficulty in swallowing. And when they are not able to swallow this level, they usually start drooling. When the symptoms becomes more aggravated, they usually have use of intercostal muscles, that is subcostal intercostal recession, use of muscles of the neck. They usually have noised, high-pitched, squeezy inhalations, and when there is decreased air entry, they become cyanosed. They usually present in a posture of a sniffing position. When you do the sniffing position, because with the sniffing position, they usually feel more comfortable. Why do children basically the epiglottis usually progress very rapidly. They usually becomes more fatigue early, and when the laryngospasm becomes combined with the edema, the obstruction that becomes more worse. So there is progressive swelling of the structures along with the laryngospasm plus the pool secretion. They all cause obstruction in the child who have epiglottitis. These all combine. That is the secretion. First the edema, and then the spasm, plus pool secretion. These all play a role in obstruction of the airway in case of epiglottitis. And when you compare A child who have croup from epiglottitis, they view the comparison shows that the children with croup, they usually have hoarse husky voice as compared to the croup in epiglottitis, they usually have muffled voice. Cough is of barking type in croup, whereas in epiglottis they usually do not have cough, but the fever is of high grade, more than 103 degrees centigrade in case of epiglottitis, while in croup they usually have mild fever. Fever is there, but usually of the mild right. There is excessive secretions, or in case of epiglottis, the child is not able to swallow the secretion. That's why they usually present with drooling. That is not present in case of the croup. And in case of epiglottis, due to excessive swelling of the epiglottis or epiglottic fold, they usually have neck swelling. It is not usually present in the case of croup. The onset is sudden. They usually present with a history of 1 or 2 days only of high grade fever, pain in the neck, pain in neck, difficulty in swelling. But croup is usually have a prodromal period of 2 to 3 days. Then they develop stridor. And the seasonal variation is present in case of croup, but epiglottitis can present at any time of the year. Croup is usually present in the autumn and early winter. The treatment of epiglottitis is basically to maintain, the basic is to maintain the airway, keep the airway patent. Anytime the child may need tracheostomy, or they may need the passage of the ETT and protect the child on ventilator. So maintain the airway. Do not agitate the child, because when the child becomes agitated, start crying, obstruction becomes more worse. Give oxygen to the child, and antibiotic play a role, because this is of most of the time in more than 80% of the cases of bacterial etiology. That's why you have to give antibiotic. With IV antibiotic, with the control of temperature, by giving oxygen and maintain the airway, we can treat these children. Prognosis, regarding the prognosis, viral croup is basically it's a self-limited disease. You usually do not require any management, only require a reassurance until unless the child is present with moderate to severe distress. Then you have to treat the child, and the symptoms usually improve within 2 days, but most of the time it will increase in 2 days. But sometimes if it is of severe variety, that may last for about a week, not more than that, because most of the time it's a viral etiology. Other uncommon complications of croup, it could be the child may develop the lower respiratory tract infection, tracheitis, or they may develop pulmonary edema. These are the complications that usually present in less than 1% of the children. How you prevent croup? You can prevent croup by immunize the child with the flu vaccine. And as we already mentioned that croup, one of the cause of croup or pharyngitis and laryngitis is the diphtheria, that can be prevented by giving the diphtheria vaccination. So you can immunize the child for flu and diphtheria to prevent the laryngotracheal bronchitis. But at one time, the croup referred to be the diphtheриal disease, but with vaccination, diphtheria is very rare in the world, in the developed as well as in developing worlds. But in case of what is the prognosis in case of an epiglottitis? If you keep the airway patent, maintain the child, then the etiology, then the prognosis is very good. Otherwise, if you do not maintain the airway, then the child have high mortality. But you can prevent epiglottitis more easily than compared with the croup. You can prevent, because most of the etiology, more than 80% of the cause of epiglottitis is bacterial infection, H. influenzae. So vaccination against the Haemophilus influenza is that's why the cases of epiglottitis markedly decrease after the introduction of vaccination against Haemophilus influenza. So you can prevent epiglottitis by vaccinate the child. So along with this, if we deal with other upper respiratory tract infections include like tonsillitis, like pharyngitis, or rhinitis. Tonsillitis, in our OPD, most of the time, the basic large chunk of the children you present with upper respiratory tract infection, including flu or tonsillitis. So what are the common cause of tonsillitis in children? most of the time, more than two-thirds of the cases, it is of viral etiology. And how they present tonsillitis, they usually present with the signs and symptoms of what? Sore throat. They usually, in case of viral etiology, they usually present of low-grade fever, sore throat, or cough. But if it is due to of bacterial etiology, like the common organism of bacterial tonsillitis is could be streptococcal infection. If the child have bacterial etiology of tonsillitis, they usually have very high grade fever. They usually have toxic flow, very difficulty in swallowing. They are unable to take the feed. They may present with drooling of the saliva and with high grade fever. And when you examine the throat, tonsil, there may be pustular secretions over the tonsils in case of bacterial etiology. But in viral etiology, they usually only have increased erythema of the tonsils, and they usually do not present with the pus. And in case of bacterial infection, you may find enlargement of the lymph node. They usually present of the soil of the neck. One of the common cause of the common is not nowadays. The common is viral. More than two-thirds of the cases, the tonsillitis is due to of viral etiology. Likewise, pharyngitis. The common cause, nowadays, one of the cause of pharyngitis is diphtheria. Diphtheria is also a preventable disease that can be prevented by giving diphtherial vaccine. So that's why nowadays diphtheria is very, very rare in developed as well as in developing countries. So that's an. If you want any question. Okay, start question. So, what is this? How we are going to do scoring for group and see whether it's range from. We give a scoring to we assign score to each of the 5 symptoms. What are the 5 symptoms? I have already mentioned. These include the presence of cyanosis, use of accessory muscles, okay, and use of accessory muscles, presence of cyanosis, signs of distress. एक second रुको बेटा. So with this scoring system is that the scoring system, this is scoring, you assign the points to the 5 factors that includes the level of consciousness, whether the child is calm and quiet, fully conscious, you give score 1. If the child is agitated, irritable, you give a score 3 to that child. And if the child is fully unconscious, you give a score 3. Likewise, if the child is cyanosed, if the child is maintaining the oxygen saturation, there is no cyanosis, then you can give the score is 1. But if If the child is cyanosed and not maintaining oxygen saturation, you have to give score 2. If the air entry is normal, equal bilaterally, you give a score 0. But if the air entry is decreased, then you give a score 2. But if there is no air entry at all, you give a score 3. Likewise, if the signs of use of accessory muscles, that is the presence of subcostal intercostal recessions, use of accessory muscles are there, then you give a score 3 to 4. On the basis of this, make a score that usually range from 0 to 7. If the child have normal, fully conscious, active alert, there is no cyanosis, only stridor is there, air entry is equally bilateral, there are no signs of a respiratory tract and use of accessory muscle, they usually have a score from 0 to 1. So they do not need usually
Hello, ma'am.
hospitalization. But if the score is more, that is, the symptoms are more
Ma'am.
worse, like if the child unconscious or they have cyanos.
Hello, ma'am.
G. G. So you score the child according to that. The next part of the child airway is trachea. No, it's at the level of the, not trachea, it is at the level of the cricoid region. What is the pooled secretion? Why is edema or cyanosis seen in both croup and epiglottis? It's pooled secretion in case if the airway is narrow, okay, if edema is superimposed over there due to severe inflammation, that is more marked in case of epiglottitis as compared to that in case of croup, that leads to difficulty in swallowing of the secretion. We usually swallow our secretion, but if it is edema over the upper respiratory tract infection, and so there is difficulty in swallowing of the secretion, that secretion get pooled at that side. And why is edema? Edema is due to inflammation. And cyanosis, why cyanosis? When there is combination of edema, there is also pooling of secretion over there, and the child may develop spasm. Then there is more obstruction of the airway. And when there is obstruction of the airway, there is no breathing. There is no exchange of the airway. That's why they become cyanosed. It is more marked in case of epiglottitis as compared to that in the group. Anji. What is this? If you want any more question? Any more question? The narrowest part of the trachea, ये देखो.
Thank you.
The narrowest part of the trachea, you can say, the nearest portion of the periodic airway is the cricoid region at the subglottic level. Make obstruction with the subglottic pathology more likely. Cricoid ring is below the glottic, is in the subglottic region, not in the supraglottic. Supraglottic more, that's why the subglottic pathology, subglottic glottitis we say is the croup. Supraglottic is the epiglottitis. Epiglottitis is not much common as compared to the croup. Any more question, Vita? Where can we cover this topic from? This topic from what? Upper respiratory tract infections you can get from your textbook. Because basically the upper respiratory infections include, it's a very broad topic. It includes the rhinitis, it includes the diphtheria, it includes tonsillitis, it includes pertussis, as well as these two talks. But these we deal in different lectures. We have the lecture of diphtheria and pertussis separate. We have the lecture of tonsillitis separate topic on tonsillitis. And so in this lecture, we only deal with the more emphasize on croup and epiglottitis. But if you have any, you want to question regarding the tonsillitis or regarding pharyngitis, diphtheria, or pertussis, you may ask it. The basic take a message in this topic is that how you differentiate between the croup and the epiglottitis, because in case of epiglottitis you have to early intervene the child. You have to do early assessment of the child and early intervention, because if you miss that child, they usually progress very rapidly, and they usually have very high mortality. So you have to differentiate between the croup and the epiglottitis. You have to know, okay, what is croup and what is epiglottitis. Epiglottitis is basically it's a supraglottic region as compared to croup. Croup is basically the subglottic pathology. And croup is usually present with hoarse, husky voice, with barking cough, with history of cough and fever or flu in the past 3 to 5 days. But in epiglottitis, the child they usually present with initial symptoms is the throat pain. That is followed by the high grade fever, difficulty in swallowing, with the swelling over the neck. They usually they develop stridor early on, as compared to that of the croup. Okay, and why you prevent, um, if the child is present with upper respiratory tract obstruction, you have to intervene the child early. The one of the common cause of upper respiratory tract obstruction is the airway inhalation, airway aspiration. They usually present with the child take the coin. They present with the obstruction of some foreign body in the nose. These are also the other causes of obstruction. What are the common signs of upper airway obstruction in children? A common sign is the three signs are the presence of respiratory distress symptoms. And what are the signs of respiratory distress? Any two of the signs, like use of accessory muscles, cyanosis, grunting, increased breathing work, okay, or they may have flaring of the elanazai. Along with that, stridor is one of the symptom. Is one of the symptom of uh, upper respiratory tract airway obstruction. So the most common uh, signs of upper respiratory tract obstruction is basically stridor, okay, respiratory signs of distress, and or the hoarseness of the voice. Hoarseness of the voice is because of the edema over the vocal cord. So the common symptoms are stridor, signs of respiratory distress, or the hoarseness. But the common sign and symptoms of upper respiratory infection is different. It depends upon the etiology, it depends upon the site. If there is involvement of in case of rhinitis, they usually present with the signs and symptoms of flu, fever, runny nose. They usually do not present with the cough. But if there is tonsillitis, they usually present with this sore throat, difficulty in swelling, high grade fever. When there is pharyngitis, they usually present with a dry cough. The, or and if there is involvement of the lower part of the upper respiratory tract airway, then they usually develop the stridors. Okay, they may develop the signs and symptoms of respiratory distress also. Okay, any more question? Or are we on with it? What are the common? Okay, biphasic stridor, as I already mentioned, Initially in croup we usually have subglottic region. The obstruction is the subglottic region. Upper respiratory infection, the common is the inspiratory stridor. But if there is involvement, it gets more becomes more progressed. They may develop the expiratory stridor also. If the subglottic part is more involvement, they may develop expiratory stridor also. So in one pathology, initially you find only the inspiratory stridor, but later on, if there is progression of the disease, they may present with the biphysical stridor. But when the lesion is above the vocal cord, in the supraglottic region, the stridor is basically it's of inspiratory variety. Whereas in subglottic region, if there is obstruction, then they usually have expiratory stridor. So when in the lesions of supraglottic obstruction or supraglottic pathology, if the disease gets more progress, it involves the subglottic region. They develop inspiratory stridor initially. It is followed by the expiratory and as well as the expiratory stridors. Okay, so we may we may finish with the lecture. Okay, Allah Hafiz.